Wherever I went, I just knew everybody around me was thinking about me, talking about me, had expectations of me. I knew that there was no other possible subject that could be more interesting than me and what I'm doing. I heard someone say that we're like egomaniacs with inferiority complexes.
Yes.
And we think everybody's thinking about us, and they're all thinking we're a piece of.
I dreamt that you were twisted through seven.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Soberful podcast, and I'm Veronica.
And I'm Chip.
And we are here to talk today. Actually, can't believe sometimes we do topics, and I think, I can't believe we actually haven't talked about that in our coming up to 5 years of doing this. We're going to talk about the
5
obsession.
years? Have we been doing this 5 years?
It will be in April. Yeah.
Jesus. I mean,
Ha-
well, goodness me, yes.
I remember when we started this, I remember we were having a conversation because it was your 70th birthday coming up.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, and it's my 75th in about 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been 5 years. I can't believe it.
Wow.
Oh my God, it's gone fast, hasn't it?
I'm afraid so, yes.
Time speeds up as you get older. So we're going to do self-obsession today. We're going to talk about the obsession of self.
Because you're right. I'm surprised we haven't done this because I am the king of self-obsession. I was riddled with so much self-obsession. It was like a mental disorder. It was that bad. You know, I would be thinking, right, okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go to a support meeting. Okay, what clothes shall I wear that make me look? Didn't have much choice, by the way, but what clothes can I look? I would be worried in case one trouser leg was a little bit shorter than the other trouser leg because I knew everybody in the street and would notice if there was about half an inch difference in my trouser length difference.
And everybody would be talking about it.
And of course,
I mean,
yes,
they would probably alert the press.
They probably would, yes. They would be talking about it, looking at it, talking about it, thinking about themselves.
Oh my God, that Chip Summers.
Yeah, they would be talking about the size of my nose. They'd be talking about this because I'd be looking in shop windows just to check how big it was, which is the biggest mistake you can make because it makes it look bigger. I had to time my arrival at this support group meeting in just the right way. Didn't want to arrive too early because then you'd be on the spot and you'd have to talk to somebody. Didn't want to arrive late. Definitely didn't want to become late and open the door and have everybody look at you. So I had to time the arrival just right. Then where were you going to sit? Am I going to sit at the front? Well, that's good in some ways because you can't see your breast, but everybody else can see the back of your neck and they can see what the back of your neck looks like. And you had that little spot there this morning, which everybody now thinks looks like a carbuncle. So, okay, so do you want to sit at the back? Well, that's fine because you can watch everybody else. But if you do say anything, everybody's going to turn around and look at you. Then if I ever said anything, I was disappointed that people
there wasn't a standing ovation.
Yeah, or people didn't hold up scorecards or anything. And, and they seemed to just go on to the next person. They didn't go, hold everything. What did you just say? I need to write that down. We need to get this off to head office. You've just said something incredible. So none of that happened. At the end of the meeting, I didn't know where to stand, didn't know what to do, I didn't know how to stand. I didn't know whether, do I look, and then I'd be sitting there. Do I sit casually? Do I sit a bit too casual? Do I cross my legs? Do I try and look interested? I see people nodding along and I think, okay, I better nod along, and that looked ridiculous. And then if somebody next to me burst into tears, I'd be going, oh, geez, this is a test. I wouldn't be thinking at all about the poor person next to me who's distraught. I'd be thinking about, because I knew everybody was looking at me and about how I was reacting to the person crying next to me. And it was like that full time, 24 hours a day. It was a nightmare.
So I want to say that in my experience, self-obsession, the obsession of ourselves, is one of the defining characteristics of addiction. And in fact, both of the NA and the AA books refer to it. And I remember reading it for the first time and kind of going, oh my God, that's me. It's like I'm obsessed with like me. And I want to say, if you're a human, it's not that you can ever completely eradicate that, right?
No,
But
you can't.
it's so
No.
severely out of balance. It's
Yes.
so severely, and someone, the best description that I heard, because I was your what you said is exactly what I would go through. Is like wherever I went, I just knew everybody around me was thinking about me, talking about me, had expectations of me.
Yeah.
What they all think. Like I knew that there was no other possible subject that could be more interesting than me and what I'm doing. And I heard someone say that we're like egomaniacs with inferiority complexes.
Yes.
And we think everybody's thinking about us and they're all thinking we're a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And it's so burdensome, isn't it? It's so debilitating. It's just so like, oh, everything you do and say goes through this like a million filters and consider. Oh, it's just so.
I used to call it the
crushing.
megalomaniac worm. It was like I felt so insignificant and unimportant and disinterested. Everybody was and yet at the same time, when I walked in the room, I knew that everybody was looking at me and judging me and how I was
obsessed with
walking.
you.
Yeah, and how was I walking? How was I doing? Oh my God, it was absolutely, and I do think you're right. I mean, I do think there's something sort of intrinsically in human DNA that does not want to be outside of the pack. We want to be part of the group. Any sort of animal wants to be part of the group. You don't want to be excluded, left on your own. So you are obviously worried about how you are perceived and received by the others in your group, other groups of humans, and that is important. But I think also, so I do think there's something that is in our DNA. We want to be accepted, but then also practically all of us come from families where we are not certain of how we are. We're not certain of how we are perceived. We're not certain of how we are liked and loved. And that just sets up a kind of cycle of, okay, well, I need to be perfect in order not to be able to give anybody room for criticism. And that can lend itself then to, I've got to dress perfectly, I've got to speak perfectly, I've got to work perfectly, I've got to walk perfectly. I've got to do everything in a way that is kind of acceptable to everybody, which does sort of then build into this just vortex of self-obsession that can be absolutely crippling for people. And of course, what is the magic cure for that? I'll have a drink. It doesn't, then suddenly I don't feel like that.
Yeah. And exactly. There's so many things when I got sober that I don't know if you had the same experience. That I was really shocked because I thought I was the only one. I was really shocked to find out that I was not remotely original. So pre-drinking, like drinking before going out to drink, I thought I was the only one who did that. They call it pre-gaming in America. But also, just like on a Friday night, walking into the local pub, just thinking everybody's going to turn around and be looking at me, and but finding out that actually tons of other people felt like that, and that quick drink, it just takes the edge off of that. It just kind of takes that away when you don't know how to deal with it. It's such a horrible way to live, and it's really, really out of balance. I think it comes from our teenage years, from our so I have an 11-year-old currently who he couldn't care less what he looks like, couldn't care less. He just likes he likes jogger pants and a sweatshirt. He's good. And he's not right now, he's going through a phase where he doesn't want to cut his hair. And it looks like I'm like, Xavier, you need to go and do something with your hair. Just it's alarming. He just doesn't care. But at some point he will, right? That happens usually in puberty and teenagers. Yeah. And I think that point is so sensitive, that age between whenever puberty hits, where all these things, bodily changes are all of a sudden happening, and your peers' appearances are changing, all those hormones. And I think if you're like us, if you don't have the support of your parents, and you haven't been supported to develop good self-esteem, I think that's when it kind of craters and doesn't recover. I know that's how it felt for me, is like, I think, I had bad skin as a teenager. I had spots.
Yeah,
And
me
that
too.
really, like, I got
Yeah,
teased, and I was very, for years was very sensitive about that.
yeah,
And I just felt like I just didn't recover from that very difficult time, because we weren't equipped to, right? We weren't,
sure.
I think there's kids that are equipped to, and we were not equipped to deal with that. And you know, so that kind of, when you're 13, I remember this boy teasing me about my spots, like that just stayed with me, like
Yeah,
it just didn't leave for
yeah,
years.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think there's other kids who are more equipped, can kind of rationalize that and not care and stuff. What do you think?
I think well, first off, as I said, when you said, "Oh yes, I think that way too," my immediate reaction when anybody used to say that to me, if I used to say, "Oh gosh, I feel so self-obsessed about this," and somebody would say, "Oh, I do that as well," I'm thinking, "No, you do not do it to the same length and depth that I do. I do it differently and worse and deeper than you do. But nice of you to try. Thanks for the attempt." But yes, I do. I suffered from spots as well, and had to go through all kinds of rubbing all kinds of rocks and salt all over my face, and yeah, it was difficult. But then I was in an all boys school, so I certainly wasn't alone in that. And I definitely think a combination, because don't forget, I mean, I went to boarding school at 6.5, so you're kind of away from parental guidance and advice then. I think it's a combination of, are there people I can talk to about this? Are there people I could safely air this to without getting teased? And unfortunately, that age group, as you just said, we love to find people we can tease, pick on, bully, whatever. And so I do think it does get created then. But I think intrinsically there is a sense of, am I okay? Am I all right as an individual? And do I need to keep on adding things to my exterior, like clothing or behavior, that kind of makes me more interested and more acceptable? Because I, I, to me, self obsession is all about, am I what I am doing? Is it acceptable? And I think that can start very young, maybe especially now as well, with access to social media and stuff. That thing is my look acceptable? Is the
Yeah.
way I think acceptable? Is what I say acceptable? Are my mannerisms acceptable? Am I up to date with the right jargon and stuff like that? All those things about which we are judged tends to make us constantly have this kind of internal critic not critic, censor, that is constantly filtering what you think, what you say. Is this the right thing to do? Will this be acceptable? Will this make me fit in? I mean, it's a full-time job, and I think it comes as a shock to somebody like me, 37, getting into our, recovery, feeling like a child, socially feeling like a child. And I think that really did take me by surprise a bit. I thought, okay, I'm going to get in, stop drinking and everything. But then suddenly finding myself as socially inept as I was when I was 12, 13, which was shy, fearful of speaking, very worried about what people thought of me. And suddenly there I was at 37 having exactly the same feelings. I kind of,
Yeah.
but had jumped out. But then when I think about it, even when I was using, I would be, well, no, actually, no, I did let my standards slip a bit then.
Didn't you sleep in a? Didn't you live in a phone box for a
I
while?
did. I did. Yes, I was, and in a skip, a waist skip. Yeah. So yeah, my standard. Yeah, I was going to say my standards did slip a little bit there. But there was still a kind of, you know, to be a desire to be. Oh yeah, just please let me fit in. Please,
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
environment,
Belong.
please let me belong, because I've
Belonging.
never. I've yeah, belonging, because it's not just about how we are and self-assess and those examples we've given. It's much deeper than that. It's about belonging and being
Mm.
wanted and approved of. I think that's fundamental.
Yes. It's this. There's this kind of war, isn't there, where it's so deeply did I want to belong, but my biggest fear was my everything about me, my Veronica-ness would prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Like, and if I could just figure it out, like if I could just get my hair right, or say the right slang words, or make people laugh, or if I could just figure out the formula to fake it, because my as I am, I'm certainly not good enough. So I need to kind of perform, or figure
Sure.
out whatever the thing was that would make you accept me, so I could belong. But it was this war between this deep need to belong and the absolute belief that who I really was would never permit that to happen. And the only thing that sort of worked to was the alcohol,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that deep need to belong, it's just, I mean, that's so human and never goes away. And then, what happens is I just settle for whatever I could get, right? I mean, that's how I always ended up with groups of people who I drink with people that actually didn't particularly, they weren't my people, but they allowed me to be there. So I took it,
Yeah.
I got engaged to someone I was never in love with, because I just thought, because he liked me, and I was so amazed by that I was
Yeah.
like, all right. And so it was I was always I was always accepting crumbs from the table,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
just knew that who I was not acceptable.
Yeah.
And just always trying to figure out, like, what is it about me that I can change, that I can make better, that people will like and approve of, and then I'll be part of the group, and
Yeah.
never feeling like I ever figured it out.
God, isn't it? I mean, I wonder if the people who listen to these things have the same sort of process. But as we're talking about this, things are coming back to me that all my life I thought I had really big feet. So I would never buy boots, like sort of, great big Timberland boots, or other brands are available. I would buy a feet Italian shoes that made my feet look smaller and smaller, or in my view, made them smaller. And when I think about it now, I don't give a shit what anybody wears on their shoes, on their feet. It doesn't even come into my mind. I mean, obviously, if they were sort of wearing cricket boots at a dinner party, I might think, well, that's a bit odd. But in principle, I don't worry about the size of someone's foot. And I think it is as deep as, you know, being loved and accepted
Yeah.
and liked.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just say, I wanted to be liked. It went much deeper than that for me. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to
Yeah.
be, I definitely wanted to be loved. I didn't feel that at home. And that's something obviously we all wanted, but I would go to a lot of lengths to make sure. And there's a sort of irony, or dichotomy there, or whatever the word is. I don't know what the word is there. That I would be very, very self-obsessed about, but I would do stupid things, make a fool of myself in order to be accepted. And I kind of want to really reassure people that, I do think for most people, just sort of going into a room and meeting and talking to other people, or coming onto a group like this, or is excruciatingly difficult. And people go, oh, I could never do that. I could never speak in front of people. I could never do that and never do this. It does get easier, and it does get, especially when you realize that other people, I think it does help to feel that other people, although you obviously think you're the worst case and nobody feels it quite as badly as you do, it is nevertheless reassuring when people say, yeah, I used to think like that as well. And I think the more that happens, the easier recovery and sobriety becomes, because when you realize that the things that you find difficult, other people find difficult,
Yeah.
I think it makes the whole journey that little bit easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how it can change, because the first thing that changed it for me, so I would have that when I was going to meetings, like just the same, that whole thing, just
Yeah.
utterly convinced the entire room was absolutely obsessed with me, thinking about me, the way I just picked my coffee cup up, everyone
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
had an opinion about that. And it was when someone said, and I think it must have been my sponsor, I think I told them, and she said, everybody feels like that, and you don't have to worry about anyone thinking about you. because everyone's sitting there obsessing about themselves.
Yeah.
So nobody's actually thinking about you.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, oh! And that was like the first time it slightly got reduced. I was like, oh, okay. and really, I don't think there was one like particular thing that fixed it. It was really getting sober and working a program that began to reduce that. And then what happened is I sort of gained the ability to laugh at myself and be like, oh my God, you're so ridiculous. and not care. And so what shifted for me is not caring what other people think and caring what I thought about me.
Sure.
That I was going to wear what I wanted to wear because I liked it, and I was going to behave in this way because that was in integrity for me to behave that way. And that's what began to shift it. And that took time, and this was not an overnight matter.
No, I think, and I'm going to tell a story now, which I think I've told before, and if I have, I apologize. But I think I must have been about 5 years clean, and I was always obsessed with the size of my nose. People used to draw cartoons of a big nose and tiny, and it was a really bad, And I remember walking down the Portobello Road. I can remember exactly where I was, and I was thinking, I was about 5. I was thinking, God, Chip, you've got so much better at this. This is an area of your life you're nothing like as worried about it as you used to be. And I thought that was great. I felt really good, and I carried on walking, and there was a junkie at the side of the road, and it was kind of, I always used to give anybody like a kind of knowing look, like Band of Brothers kind of thing, and I sort of nodded at him, and he went, "What are you looking at, you big nose git?" And it's like, oh my God, you see, even he can see the fact that my nose is big. This poor man that I've just tried to, even he know, and it's like, damn, 5 years of progress down the drain. But yeah, now I mean, things like my feet don't give it. I do care about what I try to wear nice clothes. My wife certainly likes me to wear, 'cause, I had a lovely sort of like a Panama hat, which I would wear in the summer, and this summer I put it on, and she said, I've been wearing it for years. She said, God, I hate that hat. Well, I love this hat. What are you talking about? Oh, I still hate it. So it's gone.
Can I just say, I have always loved a man with a big nose.
Have you?
Oh my God. Oh yeah. There's just a couple of actors that I can't think of. Like that big Gaelic nose. I love a man with a big nose. I think I just, I think that I always talking about noses. I also got teased about my nose because I remember someone said about my profile, I looked like Barbara Streisand, and I was mortified. Now, honestly, I'm really, I love the way I look. And I think Barbara Streisand's a fucking goddess.
Yeah.
And I love, but that it's those kind of things when you're kids, someone says one thing like that, and you're just, and people have then gone on to have nose jobs, and I think that would just alter my whole face. I'm really happy. I like my nose, but I know that was an area I got teased about as well, and it can stay with you. So, what do you feel? What do you feel really helped you kind of just diminish that just obsession with self? I felt like I got to a point in sobriety where I was just like, this is exhausting, and I just like it sort of eventually began to run out of steam. It's like my life sort of got more interesting, and I felt accepted, and I felt like I belonged. The first place, I think the same as for you, the first place I felt like I fitted in and belonged was in the rooms. And that was enormous for me, to feel like these people get me and accept me. Like that was the first time I truly felt like I belonged. And then over time it's like this, like, oh, it's just exhausting. Just show up, don't. It kind of, I exhausted myself with it all.
I would agree with that completely. I think because when you first come into sobriety, you're very lonely. You're doing something on your own. You haven't got a whole band of friends. Very few of us come into sobriety with a whole gang of friends that know us well. We have to make new friends and new acquaintances, or readjust the ones we've got. So we only really have ourselves. So obviously that self-obsession is going to be quite strong because we've only got ourselves. Then as I think I started accumulating friends around me, they would I would hear them talk about their self-obsessions and the things they worried about. And it became a bit funny. We'd laugh at the way we all had these funny little things. And although it kind of didn't make an instant improvement, it definitely helped hearing other people had similar sort of things. And then, as you say, it kind of, as I suddenly gathered that, well, actually, I'm not alone any longer. I've got quite a few people who just like me. It all, as you said, it ran out of steam. The sort of sheer ridiculousness of it really began to sink in. The fact that I literally did think, sometimes when I said something that I'd obviously planned for about a week at a meeting, that people were going to sort of stand up and clap. It was so wonderful, when they didn't do that, or they just, I don't know, but just the sheer ridiculousness of the self-importance and having people you could laugh with about it did make a big difference.
And
When I
then
step on a dance floor, all the music stops, the spotlight is only on me, and the whole room stops dancing to look at how I am dancing, which is like, when you say, it's like mental behavior. It's mental to think like that, but I did. Yeah.
don't you have a rule that nobody should dance over the age of 40 anyway, though, don't you?
I kind of do, really. Yeah, it's like, come on, it's not, yeah,
Oh, I'm still dancing.
yeah, yeah,
It's the thing about being in a group is about I think what begins to change it is also when you can take risks to be vulnerable
yeah.
and say, this is how I felt, I've had this experience, and have other people really accept you and listen, and then have people say, yeah, I felt that too. That is what really began to change things for me, is that taking the risk to be vulnerable in that way, in a safe place. And just it was immense. It was, I think the self-obsession, 50% of it went when I heard that other people felt the same way, and nobody was obsessed with you, Veronica, because everyone's obsessed with themselves.
Yeah.
That was just an enormous shift for me. I just
Yeah.
didn't have that information.
Yeah.
I went around in the world believing I was the only one who was really suffering and struggling and had all these issues. And I looked at everyone else around me, thought everyone else was all right.
Yeah.
Just thought, you all look like you're all right. You got it together. You figured it out. You got a plan. Your days are pretty easy. I'm like this. I'm the only one here struggling, but pretending I'm not struggling. And I thought everyone else was, and I genuinely believed that.
Yeah, no, I did as well. And that was the beauty of being involved in group activities, is that I was able to hear, as we've said, other people say that they struggle, because they looked as if they got their shit together. They looked as if they were really not bothered by stuff. They had, were cool, calm. They were able to go up and talk to people and without any kind of worries. And they just looked as if they were, at a level of casual social behavior that was way out of my reach. And then I discover slowly, by listening to them and hearing them, that they're just as worried as I was. And just, it was a slow process, and I think it can still occasionally rear its head. It can still, it did it the other day. I was asked to read something, and I stumbled over a few words. I like to sort of think I can read quite well if I have to read something, and I stumbled over a few words, and I thought, oh, people are going to really, out of that 3/4 of an hour talk I did, people will really pick up on the fact that for 3 or 4 seconds, I stumbled over some words. They went through my head for a moment, and then I went, oh, stop this, that's ridiculous, But I mean, I think because I don't like disapproval. I mean, the obviously the opposite, or the yin and the yang of wanting approval, is that I hate disapproval. So I always have to try to behave, dress, act, look, talk, think in a way that cannot bring disapproval. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very, very hard work.
I'd be really interested to know, people listening to this, if they relate, if anyone's having that experience for the first time ever, is finding out that actually they're not alone with self-obsession, and that actually it's really common. And like I said, I think it's not just people with an addiction problem. Everybody suffers from it. I definitely, I come across people where I can tell they are consumed with themselves, consumed. And you know what? I don't know if you've noticed this. They can't listen. They're so consumed in their
Yep.
thoughts about that you can kind of tell they're only really absorbing about 30% of what you're communicating with them.
Mhm.
So this isn't unique just to us. I do think for me it's a defining characteristic of addiction. Everybody I've ever worked with has had some degree of this, and it's out of balance. We still, it's about thinking of yourself. I mean, I give thought to my appearance and how I'm presenting myself, some thought, but
Mhm.
mostly everything feels quite, I just sort of live my life and show up now. I don't, once in a while I think, ooh, should I have said that, or how did that go
Yeah, yeah,
down, or
yeah, yeah,
whatever, or
yeah.
but um mostly I feel like I just show up and live my life, and it's all in balance. And I want to tell you the relief of that the freedom from the obsession of self is probably the greatest freedom I've ever experienced, because it is like walking through life carrying a 10-ton weight on your back. It's a horrible way to live.
Yeah. And the strength of it is such that when people tell you that it will dissipate and it will get
Yeah.
easier, isn't good enough. It doesn't. You've got to be patient enough to wait, because I can remember lots of people saying to me, "Oh, Chip, I felt just like that, and after a while it went." And I thought, "No, it's not going to go for me. It's too strongly embedded. There's no
Yeah.
chance of
Yeah.
this going."
Yeah.
But it did, and it has. And
Yeah.
as you say, it is. I am much, much more comfortable in my own skin now. I still am oversensitive, and I still really get upset about things, but there's a kind of a self-acceptance now, that comes as which is I got funny, I quite don't really like this phrase, but it's a real gift, to have that kind of, yep, this is who I am, and I'm kind of okay with that. And whether you're okay with it or not, it has importance on me, but not as anything like as much as I used to think it did. I lead a decent life. I try and do the best I can, uh, and I feel that, as you said, it makes life, walking around the world, so much easier when you're not constantly worrying about how the rest of the world are viewing you.
Yeah, so we hope that this was helpful for you today. If you relate to any of this, reach out and let us know. Uh, it's just one of the gifts, many gifts of sobriety, is getting free from this. And it's not, it's not just about stopping drinking. It's about doing the work that's underneath to get this kind of freedom. Freedom. Someone explained it to me once. It's when we talk about freedom, it's not just freedom from the drink and the drugs, which we do get. It's freedom in our minds. It's the
Yeah,
freedom in our minds to oh my gosh, the things I can do in my thoughts, that now I'm free from all of that ridiculous crap. It's having freedom in our minds is the gift, I
it's
think.
funny, isn't it? Because before we did this today, I thought, should I have a shave or not? And because my mother always used to say to me, if I didn't shave, you look like a criminal when you didn't shave. Little did she know. Little
How
did she
right she
know.
was.
Yeah, how right she was. Little did she know. Um, but and that sort of always kind of stuck with me. And then I
Yeah.
thought, oh, sod it, it doesn't matter. And now I kind of wish I
Mm,
had, but that doesn't matter. I
yeah.
will do tomorrow.
I actually just want to, I don't think that the video quality is like that 100% that you can actually notice.
Oh,
So
good. Okay,
yeah,
I'll
so don't
start
worry about it.
growing a beard then.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
All
everybody,
right.
thank you so much for listening.
Yep.
We will be back soon. Let us know on social media what you think of this episode and if you relate to it at all. And we will be back next week. Take care.
Thanks very much. Bye bye.